So, to kick things off, let me ask you a simple question. Do you like Peak?
My name is Sonata, and you're watching Victory Road, a history of how Pokemon games craft their central narrative. I figured that after we went through the first game to ever do it, or, well, the faithful-ish remake of it, we should see how it evolved just 14 years later. In what could be considered a soft reboot, we have the most Pokemon added to the series since the first one. It's only a soft reboot in that it's meant to capture an audience of new children unfamiliar with the legacy that Pokemon had up until that point. In doing this, they decided that it would be wise to add in
156
brand new Pokemon into the fray, the most ever added on a generation-defining game. As you should know, every main Pokemon game that acts as the start to a new generation adds upwards of 100 Pokemon, and to add 151 normally wouldn't be a big deal, but it's what they did with that 151 that can be both a blessing and a curse to many people, and might be why they prefer the sequels, but we'll burn that bridge when we get there. The main thing that Black and White do is make it so that the only Pokemon you can encounter are the newly added 151, which means that they generally have to run along the same idea in order to recreate the feeling. Alright, cards on the table. This has been, and likely always will be, my favorite generation of Pokemon. I play with the same Pokemon almost all of the time, and an unofficial rule I set for myself for all of these runs was to use something I normally wouldn't, but I struggle to not pick Oshawott as my starter and Lilligant as my grass representation. I know she gets beaten by most anything later in her own game, but no matter what I do, I can't separate myself from my favorite Pokemon. The only thing I could do to spice it up is to not name her what I normally do. I had to ask a friend for it, which pained me. But to be fair, this isn't what this video is supposed to be about. But I think I decided on something to help me along my journey. A few questions to ask myself while playing the game. Firstly, how many events are before the first gym? This is important because the first gym leader is meant to set the standard. You're meant to come in and figure out what the gym itself is asking of you, like a mini puzzle dungeon of sorts, and come out the other side having crossed the finish line with a badge in hand and an understanding of how the rest of the game is going to go. These 8 checkpoints are arguably the most important ones in the game, as they're a driving force to keep you going. Second, does the game have any wiggle room? I'm not asking if the gyms can be completed in any order past a certain point like in Gen 1, but I am wondering if some events are optional or can be moved around, even if they're both required. That sounds contradictory, but it's more like doing a gym and then a rival battle, or vice versa. This is something that, unfortunately, Generation 1 does insanely well, but it's also something that technically Generation 9 does great too. I don't think that non-linearity is necessarily needed in Pokemon games, or that it's problematic per se, but I do like when the game itself has the ability to move around, like a wooden roller coaster. Yeah, those things move like crazy, that's why they're thrilling, but smooth. Third, does this timeline have decently spaced events? This one is a bit harder to define than even the last one, since it's possible that not everyone defines these events the same as I do, but sometimes a couple of gyms have nothing in between them, or there's 5 rival fights next to each other. Which means we should probably get into it. As much as I love Black and White for the overall story it tells, and how much better I think it is than previous and some future entries, it does have this problem that I don't think I can ignore anymore after I made myself aware of it. The moment-to-moment pacing is off. And that hurts to say, because I love just about every event in this game, but there are 5 rival fights before the first gym, and that's way too many. I'm sorry. It just is. I think that 3 would have been fine, one against Bianca and Shiren, and then one later against N, who, yes, I am counting as a rival for the purposes of this video. One thing that my timeline pieces don't mention, by design, is just how often you meet certain characters without fighting them. It's designed like that because, in some cases, you'll meet a character outside of their designated fight and it acts as a character piece. Sometimes the mention of a character or thing is enough to bring them into the story without there being an encounter, see Mewtwo in the Gen 1 games, or Silver being introduced as some Pokemon-stealing hoodlum before you actually fight him. Further still, when you meet your dad in Petalburg City in the Gen 3 games, but he's the 5th gym leader. It's things like that that aren't accounted for, but still are important. Since I calculate how many nodes I put on the timeline based on things like a map change, Team Galactic and Platinum has so fucking many encounters, way outdoing Team Plasma, but Team Plasma feels so in your face about it, it's insane. I only really noticed it because I'm not taking my time with this game, which is what I'm assuming most people did and maybe do. The last time I played White was on hardware, and I was playing it the way I did when I was 19. I was slow, methodical, I was enjoying the video game, and I was about to make the second most important video I've ever made on this channel that I should revisit and make not sound bored. As an aside, I don't think Pokemon should be more than beat the bad guy and prove you're the best trainer in the region, because Pokemon works best when it's not trying to give you some grandiose plot about destroying the universe or killing everyone that isn't fabulous. I sound so fucking terrible in that video, man. The thing is, in that context, I was enjoying the story and not doing a fast casual run while intentionally breaking from my preformed habits as much as I could. I was able to take in what they wanted me to take in, and while I appreciate that, I can also see what people are saying when they came back to the series from Generation 1 or even 2 and had a different experience. I'm sure if I was experiencing the games in numbered fashion, doing Soul Silver, then Emeralds, then Platinum, and then White, my preferred game, I wouldn't feel this jarring sense of stop and go. I do think that linearity helps Pokemon in some cases. I think them trying to tell a story and not just letting you make your story is a fine thing to do. This is a role-playing game with a definitive timeline of events, not a choose-your-own-adventure game. This was a lot of words to say that I love this game and its core story very dearly, and it's close to my heart as the best Pokemon games for a very important reason that no other game series outside of Scarlet and Violet come anywhere close to. It's something I like to call narrative resolution. Micro essay: why do generation-defining Pokemon games end with the player becoming the champion? The easy answer is that that's the final boss. What the fuck are you talking about? And you're correct in saying that 70% of the time. I'd argue that it's 80% because, while I think that it's important that you fight Red in the post game, it's a super boss, not the final boss. It's like saying fighting Cynthia in Unova is required. I just don't think so. Never mind that it's canonized in the Gacha music video from a few years ago, one that still makes me emotional because I'm cringe and Pokemon means a lot to me. Laid out in the first generation is that the person who beats the Elite Four is named the champion, and then it's Blue who's the champion, and you kinda just want to kick his shit in. Reinforcing that this is the end is how the credits play after this, but I think this has led a lot of people into thinking that the champion fight has more significance than it does in actuality. Simultaneously, the idea that the Pokemon on the box is the most important thing in the game started in Generation 3 with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, all three requiring you to go meet the Pokemon on the box in order to progress the story past the 7th gym, which also means that there's little importance as to what the 8th gym actually means as part of the League storyline defined in the last episode of Victory Road. This is an issue in almost all of the games barring Gen 1, Gen 5, and Generation 8 oddly enough. Gen 8 is because Raihan is kind of treated as a big shot, but that's also because he's taking big shots from either Leon or Pierce, dealer's choice. So to get back to it, the answer to the question, why do generation-defining Pokemon games end with the player becoming the champion, is that the champion fight is a means to set up the credit sequence. You've essentially proven that you're the best in the region. Isn't that just a nice bow to wrap up your entire journey? You've already dealt with everything else at this point. Why not just do the last thing on the checklist? And therein lies the problem. Becoming champion shouldn't be part of a certain checklist for you, the player, to have. It's supposed to mean something, I think, for the player to ascend to the level of being the best, which is why I think Black and White do something interesting in that the narrative resolution is tied to the defeat and downfall of the opposition, which coincides with the reveal and usage of the legendary Pokemon, which also coincides with not the resolution to the League story, and also narratively ends the rival story. It's a coalescence of things that ultimately lets you finish the game without needing it to be the one thing that would quote-unquote make you the best. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but look at why Generation 1 is so satisfying. The thorn in your side, Blue, has been poking you every step of the way, and it means something when, for the last time, you put your boot in his ass. Look at why Scarlet and Violet, beyond all of its flaws, is narratively satisfying all throughout the game. It's because all three of the paths that you go down come together at the end because becoming a champion, aka part of the collective of title holders, isn't the most important thing on the menu. In Pokemon Black and White, the most important thing isn't becoming the champion because it's told to Sharen, and by extension the player, that that's not what true strength is. This is what eventually pivots him to calming the fuck down and becoming a gym leader in the next game, which is what we call narrative resolution. Even if in-game that took maybe a year and a half. The most important thing in Black and White is resolving things with Team Plasma, or more importantly, N. N is the linchpin of Black and White's story, and resolving things with him is the most important part of the game, which does happen to involve putting your foot Your food, which does happen to involve putting your foot up Getzis' ass. It's so dedicated to making N the resolution that, despite your journey being ostensibly about Pokemon collecting, he goads you into becoming a champion-level trainer to fight him, and not become the champion. Despite Shiren and possibly other people saying that fighting gyms is how you become strong, it's N that tells you that his power as a trainer and as a person far outweighs the title of champion, and that you have to get there in order to fight him since he's doing the same. Micro essay over. To that end, I think it's important to show the end of the timeline where you fight Rival C, Team Plasma Boss, and then the timeline ends. But for the sake of my own sanity, I did go and become the champion in this playthrough, which is a super boss instead of the final boss. I can't state how much of a great decision I find this to be because it's hard to quantify. Like, yes, the hardest fight that most people can think of in this specific part of the world should be enough to throw me into the depths of hell. I live for this to be a thing. So I think it's pertinent to answer the 3 questions that I pose at the start of the video, so let's see what we've got. How many events before the first gym? Too many at 5. I'm just going to say that I think this is not good. Does the game offer any wiggle room? Unfortunately, I have to say no. There's parts of the game where you can go a little bit forward, but not enough to make a difference. It's not like you can change cities that are important to the gym progression, though I feel like that could have been circumvented if there was just a guy at the front of the gym who checked badge progression before letting you in, and there is a guy like that and they just don't do anything with it. Does the timeline have decently spaced events? Going by what the timeline nodes say, I'd argue yes. Actually playing the game, I'd say it depends. However much time you spend doing non-gym activities is up in the air as to how much these nodes actually mean. I think it was a lot, but after playing the whole game, I had a good time. I find the dungeons you go through to be utterly fascinating. Chargestone Cave is a favorite of mine because I like Joltik, and I named it after one of the 2 people my videos are dedicated to. The only problem which, now that I think about it, is a recurring problem throughout the series is how it feels to go from gyms 5 to 6 to 7. They're a bit paint by numbers, which hurts when Skyla is my favorite gym leader in the series. If you're wondering what my order for that is, it looks like this, because I'm unfortunately of the male persuasion that likes people of the feminine persuasion, and I think Skyla and Nessa are really hot. My DMs are open. So what can we learn from Pokemon Black and White? So as I write out these "what can we learn" segments, the more and more I realize that I want to educate, or rather inform people about what actually goes into Pokemon games, as if this hasn't been a dissected and understood topic for the past decade at least. Black and White, I think, teaches us that it's important to have a narrative cohesion to things. The way that every storyline melds together, how and when and where things are introduced are important. The record for the earliest introduction of the legendary story at Gym 2, of all things. I always think that a lot more games should take after Black and White, but having played it coming off of Fire Red and Leaf Green, oh baby, there's some stuff here that I know comes from Generations 3 and 4, and carries into generations after. Black and White are a microcosm of everything I love, and I think a lot of things people hate. Roadblocks that don't move until you beat the gym, a limited selection of Pokemon at the outset, and a story that could potentially be beating you over the head. Though, I think the story, as you'd maybe call it, is important to tell. A tale about truth and ideals, based in 4 characters who represent things that can't be defined in black and white terms. See what I did there? Mechanically speaking, I think ideals are, and have always been represented in team building. A thing I'll go more into in this episode's bonus video, which you can watch along with other bonus videos if you become a channel member. For as little as $1.99, you too can watch me rant over random footage about things in the video, or director's commentaries on past videos if I'm ever able to get around to those. I truly do appreciate your support, and this stuff goes a long way in making me be able to make these videos more quickly and efficiently without having to worry about, eating. The other mechanical thing is truth, which is in the hard order that you must take on gym leaders, and really the whole league in general. Team building is hard, and you're going to go around on a journey to figure out what you actually want. I do agree on some points that most of your team building should be available by maybe Gym 6, because that gives you enough time to fuck around and find out about things and how your team should feel. I don't think trainers and gym leaders should scale to your level, otherwise you're going to get Fallout 3, and I don't think very highly of Fallout 3. I am saying that the world you may or may not design, or worlds in future games, should take the chance to let you encounter a bunch of different Pokemon, even if that means going out of the way to do so. You can lock off gym progression, but I don't think that world progression should necessarily be locked off. Disincentivized? Sure, absolutely. This is a light way of saying that I think Scarlet and Violet, through sheer incompetence on the developer's part and sheer willpower on the players, does do this in spades, and I think that that's wonderful. The only thing that those games could do to create an air of what I would call the mechanical truth would be to force you to do the gyms in level order, but I think that that's negligible because some gym leaders just feel like their number. Like, I can't imagine Iono being anywhere but 3rd or 4th, and Larry can only be 5th in my mind, though I think Grusha and Tulip can be interchangeable. If you liked this video, I'd really like to hear what you thought about it and what you feel about Pokemon Black and White. Not the second games, we'll get there when we get there, Lord knows I haven't, but still. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. Hey, if you guys could do me a favor, I'd love to hear what game you guys want me to cover next. It'd mean the world to me if you commented which game and why. With all of that said, my name is Sonata. Let's continue down Victory Road.